Get down on your knees and clean it, Sarah. Since when does a janitor get to talk about fairness? Richard Hale tilted his coffee cup and slowly poured the dark liquid onto the polished stone floor in front of the entire night shift. A few nervous laughs escaped, then died immediately. Nobody dared look directly at Sarah, but everyone understood that she was being humiliated simply because she had asked about 3 overtime payments that had disappeared from payroll. Outside the Whitmore Grand, rain lashed against the large windows overlooking Nob Hill. Inside the lobby, gold-covered chandeliers cast warm light over Sarah's worn gray uniform. Richard placed the empty cup on her cart and folded his arms. "You changed their work hours," Sarah said, her voice low but clear. "The time clock shows they left the hotel at 2 in the morning. Payroll only counts them until 11 at night. Since when are you an auditor?" Since they started working without getting paid. The smile on Richard's face turned cold. Hale nodded toward the puddle of coffee. "Prove you are still useful." Sarah tightened her grip on the cleaning cloth. She knew that one more sentence of defiance could be enough for Richard to fire her that very night. Her mother's medication payment was due. Ethan had one more school term before submitting his conservatory scholarship applications. Slowly, Sarah lowered herself to her knees. But before she began wiping the floor, she slipped one hand into her apron pocket and removed a sheet of paper folded into quarters. When Rosa, the oldest laundry employee on the night shift, bent down to help her, Sarah quietly placed the paper in the woman's hand. "A copy of the time records," she whispered. "Zonot, keep it in your locker. Take it home." Rosa slipped it into her sleeve. The movement lasted only a few seconds, but Richard had already turned back toward them. Sarah immediately covered the coffee spill with the cloth, hiding Rosa's hand as it moved away. From the lounge across the hallway, the piano suddenly stopped in the middle of a chord. Ethan Collins sat beneath the warm yellow lights with both hands still resting on the keys. Through the open doorway, the 17-year-old boy saw his mother kneeling at Richard's feet. His face flushed red. Ethan shot to his feet, but Sarah looked up at exactly the right moment and gave him the slightest shake of her head. Just one small movement. Ethan understood. If he caused a scene, he would lose his part-time piano job too. The money he had been saving for conservatory applications and his grandmother's medical expenses would disappear with it. He sat back down, his jaw clenched, and continued playing while the notes trembled with anger. Richard turned toward the employees. This is what happens when someone forgets her place. He had no idea that a black car had just pulled up in front of the hotel. Hale also did not know that the man stepping out had instructed his driver not to notify management. Alexander Whitmore had returned to his own hotel without an appointment. For 3 consecutive months, the employee benefit fund at the Whitmore Grand had shown a deficit even though hotel revenue continued to rise. Richard's reports were always so perfect that they had become suspicious. Alex wanted to see the hotel when nobody had enough warning to stage a performance for him. Richard received a message from the front desk just as Sarah finished cleaning the floor. His expression changed instantly. "Get everyone into the basement, now." Hale straightened his tie and hurried away to greet Alex with a polished smile. "Mr. Whitmore, if I had known you were coming, I would have arranged a meeting with the department heads. That is exactly what I did not want." Alex looked across the lobby. The smell of fresh coffee still lingered beneath the fragrance of white flowers at the front desk. 3 employees were quickly gathering their equipment, and none of them dared raise their eyes. "What happened on the night shift?" One employee spilled a drink. "I handled it." Richard immediately changed the subject and invited Alex upstairs to review reports on the executive floor. But Alex did not move toward the guest elevators. He turned into the service hallway, where the quiet rattle of cartwheels could be heard behind a closed door. Richard followed closely. "This area is not appropriate for an inspection during peak operating hours. This is my hotel. If there is somewhere I am not supposed to see, that is exactly where I need to go." At the end of the hallway, Sarah was pushing her cleaning cart toward the employee elevator. A guest walking in the opposite direction bumped into her bucket, splashing a few drops of water onto his shoes. "Can you not watch where you are going?" The guest snapped. Even though the collision had not been her fault, Sarah stopped immediately. "I am sorry. I will clean it right away." Alex stopped walking. Ianan had passed, but that voice touched a place in his memory that money, business trips, and hundreds of luxurious hotel rooms had never been able to fill. He watched the woman lowering her head. Her hair was tied neatly beneath her uniform cap. She was thinner than he remembered. Her shoulders carried the exhaustion of someone who had become accustomed to carrying everything alone. Sarah heard footsteps behind her and turned around. She recognized Alex before he could clearly see her face. Time seemed to stop in the cold hallway. The young man who had once stood beside her at the house by the ocean was now the owner of this hotel. He still had the same gray eyes, but the warmth she remembered had been hidden beneath the calm expression of a man accustomed to making decisions. Sarah pulled her collar higher, covering the locket beneath the fabric, then pushed the cart faster. "Sarah?" Alex called. She did not stop. The elevator doors opened, and Sarah pushed the cart inside. A towel draped over the handle caught on the chain around her neck. When she pulled the cart forward, the silver compass-shaped locket slipped out from beneath her collar. It swung beneath the hallway lights. A crescent-shaped scratch marked the old metal. Alex remembered that scratch perfectly. When he was 19, he had dropped the locket onto a stone step while trying to engrave a date inside it. Sarah had laughed and said that because of the scratch, she would never confuse it with any other locket. Alex stepped forward. "Sarah, is that really you?" She looked up. For one brief moment, he saw fear in her eyes before he saw recognition. "You have the wrong person." The elevator doors closed between them. Alex remained still, staring at the metal doors. Richard gave a quiet laugh behind him. "Her name is Sarah Collins, but I have concerns about several things in her record. She often uses her personal circumstances to ask for special treatment, has disciplinary problems, and may be terminated soon." Alex turned around. "He did not ask for your opinion of her." Richard went silent. "I want Sarah Collins's complete personal file," Alex said, including her time records, every complaint she has submitted, and the name of whoever approved changes to her work hours. "Sir, she is only a cleaning employee." "Then why do you know so much about her before I even asked?" Richard's smile stiffened. Alex did not argue further. He called Daniel Reed, the company attorney, and instructed him to verify Sarah's records without going through hotel management. Down in the basement, Sarah leaned against the elevator doors. Her hand trembled as she pushed the locket back beneath her uniform. 18 years of silence and one tiny scratch had allowed the past to find her in less than 10 seconds. That night, Sarah returned to her small apartment in Oakland carrying a container of leftover food the head chef had allowed her to take home. She gave the softest pieces of meat to Margaret, placed the vegetables and soup in front of Ethan, then said she had already eaten at the hotel. Ethan pushed his pay envelope toward his mother. "Take it. I only need bus fare." Sarah took half and pushed the rest back. "You are supposed to be studying, not replacing another adult and carrying this entire family. But Grandma needs her medication. I will handle it." Margaret watched her daughter touch the collar of her shirt for the third time. She recognized the necklace no matter how carefully Sarah tried to hide it. "You saw Alex, did you not?" The spoon in Sarah's hand tapped lightly against the bowl. Ethan looked up. "Who is Alex?" "Nobody," Sarah answered too quickly. Margaret was about to say more, but a coughing fit forced her to turn away. Sarah immediately stood to get her medication and water. While she was gone, Ethan watched his mother with the expression of someone who had already understood that the silence surrounding that name meant something. At the same time, inside a high-rise apartment overlooking San Francisco, Alex opened a wooden box he had not touched in years. Inside was half of an old photograph of him and Sarah from high school, the key to the house by the ocean, and a yellowed piece of paper. "If we ever lose each other, trust the compass." His phone vibrated. Daniel was calling. "I checked the public records." Sarah began using the last name Collins shortly after leaving San Francisco, but there is no legal marriage record showing that she ever married a man with that name. Alex looked at the half photograph in his hand. "What about her family?" "She has a 17-year-old son, Ethan Collins." The hotel's internal audio system was still carrying the final music of the night shift from the lounge downstairs. Alex suddenly stood upright. The melody Ethan was playing was a piece Alex had written specifically for Sarah at the house by the ocean. It had never been recorded. It had never been published. Almost nobody besides the two of them had ever heard it. Alex went down to the lounge. Ethan had just finished playing. Before standing, had tapped 3 times on the piano, then closed the keyboard cover. It was exactly the habit Alex had developed as a child whenever he was thinking. Alex stared at the teenager beneath the warm light. Then he remembered Ethan's age, Sarah's evasive eyes, and the compass locket she had tried so hard to hide. If Sarah had never been married, then who was the father she had always refused to talk about with Ethan? Alex did not leave the lounge right away. He stood behind the glass door and watched Ethan gather his sheet music, then slip the small amount of tip money he had earned into his pocket. The teenager had no idea that the man behind him was trying to find an explanation for a private melody, 3 familiar taps, and an age that matched far too perfectly. The next morning, Alex asked Sarah to meet him in a small conference room beside the laundry area. He deliberately chose a place without Richard and tried to make it feel less like a formal summons. But Sarah still remained near the door and refused to sit down. "You recognized me immediately," Alex said. "Why did you deny it?" Sarah looked through the frosted glass window. "Because you are inspecting the hotel, and I am working here. Do not speak to me like I am a stranger. 18 years is long enough to turn people into strangers." The calm expression on Alex's face cracked. "You disappeared without an explanation. I went to your house. I went to your school. I called everyone we knew. Nobody knew where you were. You left one note about the compass and turned it into a promise that only I was expected to keep." Sarah clasped both hands in front of her. There was still pain in Alex's voice, but there was also an accusation that had been living inside him for 18 years. "The past cannot be changed. That is not what I am asking." "Then what do you want?" "I want to know why you left me." Sarah fell silent. She saw her father's face on the day he was investigated and heard Victoria's cold voice again. If Sarah refused to leave, the criminal accusations would continue. Her father could go to prison. Alex would be dragged into a scandal, just as his career was beginning. But she could not tell him everything inside a room owned by the Whitmore family, while the man standing in front of her still did not know whom he should trust. "I need this job," Sarah said. "Please do not let our past make people think I am receiving special treatment or that I deserve to be punished." Alex looked at the gray uniform and the calluses on her hands. "Daniel said your mother is receiving treatment. If the problem is medical bills, I can." "Do not." Sarah looked up. The exhaustion in her eyes gave way to pride. "I need you to believe me before you know what I need." "Not believe me because you can write a check." Alex stopped. He was accustomed to using money and authority to solve problems. But with Sarah, the offer sounded almost like another way of assigning a price to her silence. Outside the room, a shadow moved away from the narrow opening near the door. Richard had only heard the final part of the conversation, but it was enough. Sarah was not an anonymous employee. She had a past with Alex, and if she handed the copy time records directly to him, every number Richard had altered could be examined. Less than an hour later, internal audit sent Richard an official notice. Because of discrepancies in the employee benefit fund, he was being given an opportunity to voluntarily disclose errors before the review expanded. If he cooperated, the board would consider management failure rather than automatically treating the matter as fraud. Richard read the notice twice. It was the final exit still open to him. He closed the email, called the head of payroll into his office, and pushed a list across the desk. Change the approval times on these timesheets. Move the shortfall into contractor adjustments. The employee went pale. "But the system keeps a revision history." "Then use the administrator account." "What about the insurance fund data?" "Delete anything that has not been reconciled." When the employee hesitated, Richard lowered his voice. "So you want to lose your job along with Miss Collins?" Meanwhile, Sarah returned to the service floor. Rosa was sitting beside a linen cart, holding a letter from the hospital. Her husband had cancer, and his next chemotherapy treatment had been denied because the insurance company said his coverage was no longer active. "But they still deduct money every month," Rosa said. "I checked all 6 pay statements." Sarah reviewed each one. The deduction code was correct. The amount was correct. But the hotel's contribution had not been transferred to the insurance provider in months. "Keep the originals," Sarah said. "I will compare them with the benefit allocation records. Richard will fire you. If we do not have documents, he will say we remembered everything wrong. That night, Sarah entered the records room using the access privileges assigned to a shift supervisor. She did not remove any original documents. She photographed the benefit allocation sheets, printed the relevant pages, then marked the date and time each copy had been made. The numbers showed that money was still leaving the hotel budget, but it was not reaching the employees' insurance accounts. There was something even more suspicious. The money had been transferred to a cleaning company Sarah had never heard of, even though she had worked at the Whitmore Grand for nearly 4 years. She folded the copies, hid them inside a concealed compartment beneath the bottom of her cleaning cart, and locked it. In the music room, Ethan was practicing for a scholarship performance when Alex walked in. Ethan stopped playing but did not stand. "If you came to ask about the song, my mother taught me that melody when I was little. Do you know who I am? The owner of the hotel, and the man who made my mother come home with both hands shaking." Alex pulled out a chair but did not sit too close. "I do not want her to lose her job. Rich people usually say that right before they make someone else responsible for the damage. What has Sarah told you about me? Not enough for me to trust you, and not enough for me to hate you." Ethan looked directly at Alex. "But my mother is not the kind of person who uses wealthy men. If you think she came back here because she wants money, you should stay away from her." As Ethan gathered his sheet music, his sleeve pulled back and revealed an old wristwatch with scratched glass. Alex recognized it from a photograph of Sarah's father at the house by the ocean. "Where did you get that watch?" "It belonged to my grandfather. Mom said it was the only thing he left behind." Ethan put his bag over his shoulder. Before leaving, he stopped. "You keep asking why my mother disappeared. Maybe you should ask what your family did that made her run." The meaning of the breakup Alex had believed in for 18 years suddenly changed. That afternoon, Daniel placed a thin file on Alex's desk. It contained records from an embezzlement investigation involving the Whitmore family's first hotel development project. Sarah's father had been identified as the person who manipulated the accounting records, but only the final conclusion remained in the file. The interview notes, original financial records, and statements that defended him are all missing, Daniel said. "A financial investigation like this does not end with 4 pages. Who signed the file closed? A notary who once worked for your family. What is strange is that his name also appears in the registration records of several companies currently receiving money from the Whitmore Grant." Alex looked up. "Richard's companies. At least one appears to be connected indirectly. I need more evidence before I make that conclusion." At the same time, Eleanor Brooks called Victoria Whitmore. The woman who had once managed the Whitmore household had remained silent for nearly 2 decades. But the news that Alex had seen Sarah again made continued silence impossible. "You should tell Alex before he discovers it himself," Eleanor said. "I saw the letters being taken into your office." Victoria stood beside the window of the family estate, tightening her grip on the phone. "You do not understand what was at risk back then. I understand that a young woman lost her entire family. Sarah made a choice. No. You put that girl in front of a choice nobody should ever be forced to make." This was Victoria's chance to end the lie. But after a long silence, she answered only, "You have stayed quiet for 18 years. Do not destroy everything now." Victoria ended the call. That evening, Margaret became short of breath while walking into the kitchen. Sarah called emergency services while Ethan knelt beside his grandmother and kept her conscious. At the hospital in Oakland, the doctor said Margaret's heart condition had not become immediately critical, but she needed close monitoring and an adjustment to her medication as soon as possible. Sarah sat beside her mother's bed. When she stepped into the hallway to sign the advance payment forms, she saw Alex standing at the far end. Daniel had notified him after Margaret's benefit records appeared during the audit. Alex did not enter the room. He knew his presence might make things harder for Sarah. But Margaret woke in a haze, looked through the partially open door, and seemed to believe he was standing beside her bed. "Alex," she called weakly. "Sarah sent letters. Your mother kept all of them." Sarah returned at the exact moment and heard the words. She froze. Alex stepped inside. "What letters?" Margaret tried to answer, but a coughing fit interrupted her. Sarah pulled the blanket higher around her mother, then turned toward Alex. "This is not the time. You wrote to me. I sent many letters. I never received a single one. Sarah looked at him, caught between wanting to believe him and being afraid to place her life in the hands of another Whitmore. You truly never received them? Or is that simply more convenient for you to say now? Pain appeared in Alex's eyes. I waited for you for years, and I waited for an answer until I could not wait anymore. Neither of them knew that Ethan had heard everything from behind the door. He returned to the apartment alone to collect his grandmother's insurance documents. Inside the medicine cabinet, behind the boxes of heart medication, his hand touched an old cloth bag. Inside were 13 yellowed envelopes. Every one of them was addressed to Alexander Whitmore. None had ever been opened. Beside the bundle of letters was a handwritten note from Margaret. A former secretary of Victoria's had returned them years later while she was dying. Margaret had hidden them because she was afraid the truth would pull Sarah back toward the family that had once destroyed her life. Ethan opened the top envelope. The first sentence made his hands begin to shake. Alex, is or not know how to tell you that you are going to be a father. Ethan sat motionless in front of the letters. Only one hospital door separated him from the man who might be his father. But between them stood 17 years that Sarah had carried alone. Would he take the letters to Alex? Or burn them to protect the mother who had never abandoned him? Ethan did not burn the letters. He did not take them to the hospital either. He placed the bundle inside his backpack and waited for Sarah to come home. Near midnight, the sound of a key turning in the lock broke the silence. Sarah stepped inside looking exhausted. Before she could even remove her coat, Ethan placed the opened letter on the table. How long were you planning to hide this from me? Sarah saw her own handwriting on the envelope. Every sound in the apartment seemed to fade away. Where did you find these? In Grandma's medicine cabinet. But I am not asking about the letters. Ethan tried to keep his voice steady. Is Alex Whitmore my father? Sarah pulled out a chair and sat down. She had imagined this moment hundreds of times. But in none of those versions had she seen the look in her son's eyes when the truth came from somewhere else. Yes, Ethan turned his face away. He had wanted an answer for years. But now that he finally had one, the first thing he felt was anger. Did he know I existed? No? Are you sure? I sent letters. I called. I tried every way I could. When I never received an answer, I believed he had chosen his family. But you never asked him again. At the time, I could not go back. So Grandma decided to hide the letters. Victoria decided to block them. And you decided I did not need to know who my father was. Ethan put his backpack over his shoulder. Good adults or bad adults, all of you think you have the right to make decisions for me. Sarah moved in front of the door but did not grab him. Ethan, it is late. I need to be somewhere that does not have any more secrets. He left the apartment before Sarah could call him back. Near dawn, Alex received a message from Sarah. Only one short line. Ethan knows. He left. He might have gone to his old school. Alex found Ethan inside the dark auditorium of the high school. The teenager sat alone at the piano. He was not playing. His hands simply rested on the code keys. Alex stopped several steps away. Sarah is worried about you. Did you come to take me home or to ask what I read? To make sure you are safe, Ethan pulled the first letter from his backpack. So you know what it feels like when your entire life is built on half-truths. Alex sat in the front row, keeping his distance. Not the way you do, but I know what it feels like to believe someone abandoned you, then discover that maybe you blamed the wrong person for 18 years. What am I supposed to call you? You do not owe me a title. Alex spoke slowly. If you allow it, I only want to begin by listening. Ethan stared at him for a long time, then handed him one letter. You can read this one. I am keeping the others. Alex accepted it with both hands. Why? Because I still do not know what kind of person you are. You have to prove that you are not like the family that forced my mother into silence. Alex did not argue. He folded the letter and did not open it in front of Ethan. All right. It was the first time Ethan had seen a Whitmore accept a boundary he had set without trying to negotiate around it. That same morning, Sarah met Daniel at the law office. She placed copies of the employee benefit allocation records, pay statements, and insurance termination notices on the table. He did not take any original documents, she said. Everything was copied while I still had authorized access. The dates and times were recorded. Daniel compared the transfer codes, then stopped at the name of a cleaning company. The registered address is a private mailbox, Hale said. The person paying the mailbox fee has a connection to Richard Hale. Sarah looked at the line of numbers. He is taking the employee's insurance money. There are signs of that, but we need bank records and server data to prove it. Zon not confront him alone. When Sarah returned to the hotel, Richard was waiting for her inside the linen storage room. On the table sat an envelope and a letter of recommendation bearing his signature. There is enough money in here to help you take care of your mother for several months, he said. I will also confirm that you reside voluntarily with a good employment record. What do you want in exchange? The copies you took? Sarah did not touch the envelope. That money belongs to the employees who paid into the insurance plan. You do not understand the hotel's financial system. Then let the auditors explain it. Richard pushed the envelope toward her one final time. He could still stop. He could return the money and cooperate with the audit. But when Sarah turned away, he tore the recommendation letter in half. You just rejected your final chance to leave this place with dignity. Sarah stopped. My dignity is not inside your envelope. That afternoon, Victoria Whitmore arrived at the hotel. She did not go to see Alex. Instead, she ordered Sarah into a private sitting room. Ethan is at a vulnerable age, Victoria said. If his identity becomes public, the press will dig through your life, your mother's illness, and everything connected to your father. Are you warning me or threatening me? I am telling you about consequences. You used fear the same way 18 years ago. Sarah looked directly at her. You made me believe silence was the only way to protect the people I loved. I will not let you use Ethan to control me again. Victoria stood, her pride hiding the uncertainty beneath it. Alex has a corporation to protect, and Ethan has the right to know his own life. The door opened. Eleanor Brooks stood outside holding a brown ledger. I think you need this? She did not look at Victoria. Eleanor handed the ledger to Daniel in Sarah's presence. The pages recorded every letter delivered to Victoria's private office. At least 13 entries carried Sarah's name. Each one had been signed for by Victoria's secretary. Victoria went pale but said nothing. At the hospital, Margaret also decided to end her silence. She removed a folded document from the lining of her medication box. It was a copy of the agreement Sarah had been forced to sign when she was 18. The document stated that Sarah had to leave San Francisco and all contact with Alex and never reveal her meeting with Victoria. In exchange, the Whitmore side would ensure that the criminal accusations against Sarah's father were not pursued. Sarah read to the bottom of the page. Tears silently ran down her face. The date on this. Margaret looked at the compass locket around her daughter's neck. The same date your father told you to remember. Sarah opened the back of the silver compass. The numbers engraved inside matched the date on the agreement. If the truth is locked away, Margaret repeated her husband's words. Look where the compass points toward the sea. Alex still had the key to the house by the ocean. That evening, Alex, Sarah, Daniel, and Eleanor drove to the abandoned house on the coast west of San Francisco. Sound winds struck the dusty windows. Alex unlocked the door using the old key that had remained inside the wooden box for 18 years. Behind a painting of a ship, they found a safe marked with a compass symbol. Sarah entered the date engraved inside the locket. A dry metallic click sounded. Then the safe door opened. Inside were the accounting ledgers from the Whitmore family's first hotel project, records of an undisclosed fund, and an old audio recorder. Daniel put on gloves and documented every item before moving anything. Sarah's father's voice came through the recording. He explained that he had discovered project money being transferred into undeclared accounts. He had copied the records because he feared that the person responsible for the finances would destroy the evidence. The documents proved that he had not embezzled anything. He had been trying to stop it, but another truth also emerged. Victoria had not taken the money herself. She had known that the accusations against Sarah's father were false, but she still used them to force Sarah away from Alex because she wanted to keep the scandal from damaging the Whitmore family. Alex stopped the recorder. He did not look toward his mother because she was not there. He looked only at Sarah, who had just heard her father's voice after living for years beneath the shadow of a man branded as a criminal. I will clear his name, Alex said. Sarah gently shook her head. Not because of me. Because of the evidence. Daniel's phone vibrated. An employee at the hotel reported that Richard had just requested access to the security camera archive and had been asking about their investigation. Back at the Whitmore Grand, Richard understood that his time was running out. He removed a diamond bracelet belonging to a VIP guest from the temporary security safe. He waited until the hallway was empty, then opened the compartment on Sarah's cleaning cart. Ethan had just arrived at the lounge to practice when he saw Richard crouched beside the cart. But Richard closed the compartment before Ethan could see what had been placed inside. A few minutes later, the security alarm echoed throughout the lobby. When Sarah returned to the hotel, high security employees stopped her in front of dozens of guests. Richard stepped forward wearing an expression of false regret. A diamond bracelet has disappeared. The cameras show you entering the guest room. Sarah looked at the screen. The footage appeared to show her pushing the cart into the room, but the timestamp in the corner skipped forward by 40 seconds. Alex ordered the search stopped. Daniel pulled him aside. If you use your authority as owner to block the process, Richard will claim you are protecting your lover. We need to let the evidence speak for itself. Sarah placed both hands on the cart handle. I agree to the search, but there must be a union representative, police officers, and a complete video recording. Nobody touches this cart until they arrive. The search took place in the middle of the lobby. When the hidden compartment was opened, the diamond bracelet was lying directly on top of the copied benefit records. The crowd erupted in whispers. Richard demanded that the police arrest Sarah for theft and possession of internal documents. An officer placed the bracelet inside an evidence bag. As he pulled the bag away from the cart, Sarah's necklace caught on the zipper and snapped. The compass-shaped locket fell onto the marble floor and slid to a stop in front of Alex's shoes. The officer reached for handcuffs. At that exact moment, Ethan ran into the lobby and said he had seen Richard standing beside the cleaning cart. Richard immediately denied it. The hotel cameras no longer contained the footage needed to confirm Ethan's statement. Then Daniel's phone lit up. The hotel's insurance provider still kept an automatic backup on a separate system that Richard did not know existed. The message on the screen contained only one sentence. Recovered the 47 deleted seconds. Would those 47 seconds save Sarah? Or would they expose a truth even larger than the theft Richard had staged? Wait! Daniel stepped forward before the handcuffs could close around Sarah's wrists. He held up his phone and showed the officer the notification from the insurance company's backup system. The original camera footage has been recovered. I am requesting that Miss Collins not be removed until the video has been reviewed. Alex did not ask the police to ignore procedure. He only said, if Sarah has to be searched in front of everyone, then the new evidence should also be reviewed in front of the same people who just watched her being accused. Daniel connected his computer to the large screen in the lobby. The footage began in the service hallway. Sarah left her cart to enter the linen storage room. A few seconds later, Richard appeared. He looked around, then opened the cart compartment. The 47 seconds that had been deleted were now clearly visible. Richard took a shiny object from his pocket, placed it inside the hidden compartment, pulled the copied benefit records over it, then closed the cart. Before walking away, he even looked directly at the camera. The entire lobby went silent. Richard stepped backward. That footage has been manipulated. A technical employee standing in the crowd spoke up. No, that is the original. He stepped forward. His hands were shaking, but his voice was clear. Me. Hale ordered me to delete 40 per seconds from the hotel server. He said it was a security directive. When I asked for written authorization, he threatened to fire me. Ethan stepped forward too. I saw him standing beside my mother's cart before the security alarm went off. Richard looked around as though searching for someone who might still defend him. This is a conspiracy. She has a relationship with Mr. Whitmore. They are using a child and a few disgruntled employees to blame me. Alex moved to Sarah's side but did not touch her. The fact that I know Sarah does not replace evidence, he said. But you do not get to use her position to turn a lie into the truth. The camera shows what you did. A witness confirms that you deleted the footage. And the bracelet was found exactly where the video shows you opening the cart. The officer removed the handcuffs from Sarah and asked Richard to surrender his phone and access card. He was not declared guilty in the lobby, but he was taken in for questioning. and further investigation involving the fabrication of evidence. Alex looked at the guests and employees surrounding them. Sarah Collins did not steal that bracelet. She was framed inside her own workplace. The public statement could not erase the moment Sarah had been searched in front of a crowd, but it returned something Richard had tried to take from her: the right to stand upright without lowering her head beneath someone else's suspicion. 1 hour later, Alex called an emergency meeting of the board. He required the presence of a union representative, employee representatives, Daniel, and an independent auditor. Sarah agreed to attend as a witness, not as someone Mr. Whitmore knows personally, she said before entering the room. I am here because employee benefits were stolen. That is also why I asked you to be here, Alex replied. Daniel presented the benefit allocation records, entered timesheets, and transfer data involving the shell cleaning company. The company's mailing address matched a private mailbox paid for by Richard. Insurance deductions were still being taken from employee paychecks, but the hotel's required contributions were not being fully transferred to the benefits provider. Rosa placed seal pay statements on the table. My husband was denied chemotherapy while the hotel was still taking insurance money from my wages. Another employee stood and described missing overtime. A third said that his daughter's scholarship had been cancelled without explanation. The numbers in the reports suddenly had faces. They belonged to families who had delayed medical treatment, borrowed money, and pulled children out of school. Alex looked at the employees around the room. I trusted polished reports more than warnings from the people doing the work. Richard committed the misconduct, but the system I am responsible for allowed him to continue for too long. I will not avoid my part of that responsibility. The meeting room door opened. Victoria walked in. This meeting needs to be postponed, she said. If unverified documents become public, the Whitmore name will suffer damage that cannot be undone. Millionaire stood and placed the letter delivery ledger in front of her. A reputation is not destroyed by the person who tells the truth. It is destroyed by the people who hide it. Margaret appeared on the screen through a video call from the hospital. She confirmed that she had witnessed Victoria force Sarah to sign an agreement requiring her to leave Alex in exchange for ending the criminal accusations against Sarah's father. Ethan stepped beside his mother holding the bundle of letters. These are the letters my mother sent to my father. The room filled with whispers. But Ethan did not look toward the corporate media team. Hale looked at Sarah. Can he read part of one? Sarah remained silent for several seconds, then nodded. Ethan opened the first letter. Alex, I do not know how to tell you that you are going to be a father. I do not need your money. I only need you to know that this child was born from love, not from a mistake. Alex lowered his head. These years of his son's life existed inside a few lines that had never reached him. Daniel continued by presenting the agreement Sarah had been forced to sign, the accounting ledgers found inside the safe, and the recorded testimony of Sarah's father. The records confirmed that he had discovered an undisclosed fund during the Whitmore family's first hotel project and had been framed as the person responsible in order to protect more powerful people. Victoria did not personally take the money, Daniel said, but she knew the accusations against Sarah's father were false. She still used them to force Sarah to leave and ordered her secretary to block every attempt to contact Alex. Every eye turned toward Victoria. Alex did not shout at his mother. He placed the agreement and the letter ledger in front of her. This is your final opportunity to tell the truth. Victoria looked at her son, then at Ethan. For the first time, the pride on her face was not strong enough to hide her fear of losing her family. Yes, she said. I used the accusations to force Sarah to leave. I believed a scandal would destroy your future and the company. I kept the letters, ordered the records of her contact attempts removed, and allowed you to believe that she disappeared by choice. Alex closed his eyes for a moment. I am still your son, but that love does not exempt you from consequences. He asked Victoria to resign as honorary chair, surrender her voting rights, and cooperate with the legal review and restitution process. Victoria removed her board credential, placed it on the table, and signed the record temporarily, suspending her authority. Richard was terminated following the internal process. Records involving misappropriation of employee funds, data manipulation, defamation, and obstruction were transferred to the appropriate authorities. Employees who had followed his orders were allowed to provide testimony under the protection of Labor Council. Sarah's father was formally cleared through an official public statement. Whitmore Hospitality acknowledged that he had tried to protect the company from an undisclosed fund and removed every false conclusion from the old records. Ethan requested a DNA test, but he set one condition. "Is or not want the result in the news or inside a business announcement?" Alex answered immediately. "That information belongs to you. Nobody will release it without your permission." The results later confirmed that Alex was Ethan's biological father. Alex did not ask Ethan to change his last name. He did not move him into a mansion, and he did not try to purchase closeness with expensive gifts. He began with short meetings, sitting quietly while Ethan practiced piano and joining Sarah when she took Margaret to medical appointments. One afternoon, after Alex helped Margaret toward the car following a follow-up visit, Ethan said quietly, "Dad, help me hold the door." Alex stood still for half a second. Then he smiled. He did not turn the moment into a declaration. He simply held the door for his son. Whitmore Grant repaid stolen overtime, restored insurance benefits, and reinstated scholarships that had been wrongfully redirected. A new oversight council was created with employee representatives, independent specialists, and community members. Daniel became legal counsel to the council, while Alex gave up the authority to personally approve decisions involving employee benefits. Sarah was invited to lead the Employee Rights Protection Department. She accepted only after a transparent selection process and only after receiving independent audit authority. "If this position exists only because I know Alex, I do not need it," she said. "If it helps make sure an employee never has to get down on her knees just to demand the wages she earned, then I will do it." A scholarship named after Sarah's father was established for the children of hotel employees. Ethan received a music scholarship based on the selection process, not because he was related to the owner of the company. Victoria came to the Oakland apartment to apologize to Sarah and Ethan. She brought no attorney and no gifts. Sarah listened, then said, "I cannot promise forgiveness yet. That will be decided by what you do after the apology." Victoria nodded. This time, she did not argue. Months later, Alex and Sarah returned to the house by the ocean. He took his half of the old photograph from his pocket and placed it in her hand. "I am not asking you to continue the story that stopped 18 years ago," he said. "I am only asking for the chance to write a new one with you." Sarah joined the two halves of the photograph, then opened the compass-shaped locket. She did not promise marriage. She did not agree to move into Alex's home. She only held out her hand. "We can start with a walk." Outside by the ocean, Ethan was playing the old melody on a piano that had been moved onto the porch. Alex and Sarah walked beside each other slowly, without trying to return to the youth they had lost. Some people can lose each other for a very long time, but when love is still accompanied by truth, they can still find their way back.